Every goal. Every game. Every kick of the ball live. From BBC Radio Scotland, this is Sportsound.
This is an audio download about Scottish football from BBC Scotland. I'm Kenny McIntyre. For terms and conditions of use, please go to our website, bbc.co.uk/sportscotland. Today's podcast is taken from BBC Radio Scotland's Sportsound programme of Thursday the 15th of December. I was joined by Keith Jackson, Tom English and the former Ross County, Inverness, Caley Thistle and Dunfermline striker Andy Barrowman. We discussed the appointment of Malky Mackay as the performance director at the SFA. It generated a huge reaction on last night's programme and we had more of the same tonight. Let's hear from the new SFA performance director Malky Mackay, who addressed the media this morning at Hampden alongside the SFA chief executive Stuart Regan.
As far as I'm concerned, it's a homecoming for me. I'm back here at Hampden again, where I started as a player at Queen's Park. So I started at the bottom level with them and made it to play for Celtic at the top end of Scottish football. So that journey and that pathway I managed to actually achieve, and I know how tough it actually can be for players to do that. Also having then experience in England as a player at Championship and Premier League, and then as a manager at Championship and Premier League, I think gives me the understanding of what it is to stand in a manager's shoes and the difficulty he's got of actually playing young players. So that barrier that we are seeing at 19 to 21, which we can get into further and later on, there is a barrier there, and it's something that managers have to look at in terms of when they're picking teams. So I think as far as that's concerned, being a manager in England, being involved in academies in England, in terms of being at Watford, when I was at Watford, we had Harefield Academy, which was the flagship and the forerunner for the EPPP in England. It's what every Premier League club now in England is run on what the basis of Harefield Academy was. I invited Chris McCart of Celtic and Neil McIntosh of the SFA down to look at it, and they brought the model back to Scotland, and it's basically what the 7 regional schools are based on. So I've got an inner depth understanding of academies as far as that's concerned. My time at both at Watford and at Cardiff, I worked at board level, but at the same time I was asked to implement strategies, especially at Cardiff, in terms of implementing various different departments, from academy to recruitment to sports science to diet nutrition to coaching departments. So there's that side of it as well, and I think I've got a fairly broad range of skills in terms of coming in to do this job. I just see it as something that we can aspire for the next generation of Scottish players to actually get to finals, get to World Cups, but bring through more and more better Scottish players, cast the net wider, because the elite are that size. We need to cast the net wider to actually build better Scottish footballers.
Stuart, few would argue against giving people a second chance, but isn't there a danger that this appointment sends out the wrong message to those pushing for equality within Scottish football?
Well, we're very proud of our work in equality and diversity. We currently have the intermediate level of the equality standard, and we're well on track for making progress towards the advanced level. And within our equality strategy, we talk about being fair and inclusive. And we accept that Malky has made mistakes. He said things that were regrettable, but he's shown genuine remorse. And we were impressed and encouraged by the actions he's taken since coming out and apologising for what he said. He's undertaken of his own volition diversity and equality training, and has lectured on that to a number of different organisations. We actually believe that Malky will be a force for good for Scottish football. He'll be part of our equality and diversity strategy and be a real advocate for the role.
But there are people who will see this as a negative move because of what Malky has said in the past. There is a real danger that this could divide people and polarise opinion.
It's up to Malky to prove to people that he can be part of our equality and diversity strategy, and for people to judge Malky by his actions and by how he behaves going forward.
3 years ago, I apologised publicly and apologised in front of cameras. Apologised privately for the 3 texts to the 2 gentlemen that I spoke about. And then for the last 3 years, as Stuart touched on there, I've been involved in diversity and equality meetings and basically been on an education for the last 3 years, to the point where probably I know more about it than probably anybody in this room, in terms of then going on to actually talk to young players young coaches concerning it. It's something that I've been involved in London, Birmingham, Manchester and abroad. And you know, that's something that I think I'm now pretty well versed in. And like everything, I suppose like any part of what you do, it's about educating yourself generally. I've been, in the last couple of years, going and looking, seeking out best practice all over the world, in football and in other sports. And that basically comes along with it. You're educating yourself, and I think that can make you better in any field that you're involved in.
Now you feel you're educated, Malky. Do you concede with what you said at the time was racist?
What I said at the time, I deeply regret, and it was said, and I came out and as I said, I then spoke to the two individuals that were involved. But it's about learning from that and going on from there, and actually making sure that you know, my understanding of what happened there I can pass on to others, and that's a big challenge, and it's something that any one of you here, in terms of stakeholders that are involved with the SFA, in terms of coaches, in terms of clubs, in terms of young players, in terms of any of you guys, Darryl's got my number. My door is open. Come and see me. Come in and talk to me, and I've got to prove by my actions, but then you can judge yourself.
Do you accept what you said was racist?
As I said, what I said at the time I deeply regret, and at that point, speaking to the people I spoke to, and then since then I've got a better understanding of it.
What would you say to people who say you shouldn't be in the job?
Again, it's you know, if it's judge me by my actions over the next period of time, I believe that my skill set, and the clubs that I've been involved in the boardrooms in terms of strategy and planning, give me an understanding of that part of this job. In terms of coaching, how to talk to players, how to talk to coaches, how to go in and talk to managers. The access that I've got to managers in Scotland allows me the chance to actually follow on from my two predecessors, because there was good work done by Mark Watt and good work done by Brian McClare. And at the moment, having read Project Brave, there's very good work done by the working party that are involved in that right now. And going on from that, I've got to make sure that I take that on, and that's why I'm here, to make sure that going forward from here that we raise standards and we manage to get Scottish players through. I'm excited about this role, but I'm excited about it because there's a generation of young Scots players who I think that we can improve in a variety of numbers of different ways. I think that we don't give them the best chance.
Just building on that, I think there's two aspects to this job for me. One's the performance aspect, and you know, Malky's football credentials speak for themselves. The other side of it is the equality and diversity side. We've spoken about that. We believe that Malky can be a real force for good in this role. As I said, we are proud of the work that we've done on our equality and diversity strategy, and we're moving very strongly towards being one of only two governing bodies with the advanced level of the equality standard. We know our responsibilities. We accept that Malky's made mistakes and has shown genuine remorse, and we believe that he should be given a chance to put his football skills and expertise into practice, and he can talk to young players, he can talk to young coaches, and actually we use that positively as part of our strategy.
There's a real risk, though, in terms of dividing opinions, Stuart. You've got to admit that there are people who will not accept this as an appointment because of that, rightly or wrongly.
There have been opinions on this subject for 3 years, and at each of the 3 occasions when Malky has taken up a new role, there have been revelations made about his past. We've undertaken due diligence through Malky and through Malky's QC, and we're convinced that Malky has got what it takes to be an excellent performance director for Scotland.
On the subject of due diligence there, how aware were you of the news that's broken in the last 24 hours that your former club Cardiff City are launching a lawsuit?
Yeah, I'll take that. No, I'll take that because we were well aware of that, and I was waiting on it. I thought it was maybe going to come a bit early in the day, but he obviously decided to type late on into the evening. It's come up the last 3 jobs that I've gone for, the same article, same person. And it was something that I'd spoken to Stuart about. It was something that my legal advisors had advised the SFA at on an early basis. I categorically deny that I've done anything wrong there. And There is no shred of evidence against me. But I do respect the legal process. And that's something that I will do going forward as far as that's concerned.
In your time at the Scottish FA, you sacked Hugh Dallas for inappropriate messages. Is this not hypocritical appointment?
Well, I think we're here today to talk about the performance director's appointment. We're here to talk about Malky Mackay, and with respect, I think that's what we're going to focus on.
Well, do you not think it's hypocritical?
Well, as I said, we're here today to talk about the performance director. It's about Malky Mackay, and we're looking forward.
Talking about the performance director, though, Stuart, maybe this is the final one on this, but wouldn't you agree that when you decided to appoint a new performance director, you wouldn't have wanted the first 10, 15 minutes of the news conference to be dominated by previous indiscretions from your new performance director? It's not ideal, is it?
As I said at the start of this press conference, Malky was a standout candidate for us. We fully understood the issues that Malky has been dealing with for the last 3 years, and that was part of the process and part of the discussion when we decided to offer Malky the role. Yes, there have been transgressions. Malky has shown genuine remorse, and we've been really impressed with how he's actually handled himself in terms of the training on diversity and equality that he's taken and the work that he's done, the lecturing that he's done on it. We believe that that can actually be part of our equality and diversity strategy in the future. He can be a force for good.
This role is about building for the future, but this is your third performance director since 2011. Why?
We're focused on trying to get the right pathway, the right structure in place. You know, we are focused on building strong elite players for Scotland, and we're determined to get the right person to lead this strategy going forward. You know, I'm not going to go into the details.
But you said it under Mark Vaught and Brian McClare, and you got those wrong.
Clearly, the performance strategy is looking to the future, and in Malky, we believe we've got someone who can lead that strategy and help us develop young players using the credentials that he's actually built over his time in professional football.
Right, Malky Mackay and Stuart Regan there. How do you think they came across today, Tom?
I think Malky, it was a tough gig. On top of all the text messages which you know about, that bombshell of the story in the newspaper this morning about Cardiff lodging a claim of dishonest conspiracy against Mackay and 4 others that he worked with at Cardiff, including 3 agents. That's not exactly ideal territory to be going into Hampden with, knowing that they were going to be asked all this. I thought Malky Mackay did well. He was obviously ducking and diving on the question of were one of his texts racist.
Yeah, he didn't answer that well, did he?
Well, he didn't want to give somebody a headline, "Yes, I am a racist." I could kind of see that. But I think he did all the right things in apologising yet again, in showing contrition yet again. I mean, you know, what else can he do on this? All he can do is keep apologising and keep saying sorry, and he's done it again in that unveiling. But it was strained, of course it was. As Chris' question there was absolutely right. I mean, you spent the first 15, 20 minutes of the press conference fielding questions about very, very dodgy text messages and this court action from Cardiff. That's not ideal territory. You were on the back foot straight away.
Yeah, we'll focus on some of the specifics from the media conference today. Keith, we had a huge reaction to this last night, as you'd expect. Over 90% of it negative. More coming in tonight. We'll get to that. Can you understand the feeling around this?
Yes and no. In fact, yes and yes. Right. Let me. Yes. It's very easy to understand why there would be a great deal of unease about disappointment, given Malky Mackay's past and given the actions that he's, became infamous at his time apart from Cardiff City. When you actually really dig deeper into the thing, when you study, the length of time that Malky Mackay has now been involved with charity works, re-educating himself. When you consider that this was 3 texts out of 9,000 found in his phone, it would suggest to you that this wasn't the sort of behaviour that he was indulging in on a daily basis. Doesn't make it any more right. It doesn't make it any more excusable. He's done something that he should not have done. He's been found out for it. But the more and more I think about it, the more and more I talk about it and I hear it discussed, the more and more I'm coming to the conclusion that, it is correct to say you cannot continue to punish this guy for the rest of his life. At some point, you need to be able to say, this guy deserves a second chance. He can't do anymore. He actually can't do anymore. It's not as if he's brushed it off, said, oh, that wasn't anything of significance. He's put his hands up to it. A mere culpa. He said it was significant. It was significant enough for him to volunteer to enrol in classes, to re-educate himself on the subject. I think at some point you've got to say, the guy's suffered for what he's done. What he did was not right. What he did was offensive. What he did was ignorant. The language he used was, highly insulting. But he accepts that. He accepts that. He's not hiding from it. So, do you keep banging the guy over the head for that? I say no. I say I'm happy that you can lay all that now to one side when you appoint Malky Mackay to a job. I actually think the more fundamental question here is not, is Malky Mackay a racist? Have the SFA employed a racist? But have the SFA employed the right man for a job which is of fundamental importance to the future of the Scottish game? And I think we might have been sidetracked by all the hullabaloo around this.
Well, what's your opinion on the appointment, Andy? Do you think he'll have a problem getting those that matter within the game on board with what he has to deliver, which is so important to the future of our game here in Scotland?
Yeah, that's the biggest issue. And listening to a few of his sort of press releases today, he's saying all the right things. He's using words like marriage, relationship, because that's what it is. That's what he's got to bring.
Good luck with that.
Well, exactly, but that's what he's got to do. He's got to bring all the, again, words they use, stakeholders of Scottish football together and get them to buy into Project Brave, a strategy, whatever it is you want to call it. He's got to get all them to buy into it.
And
that's his biggest task.
You seem to be highlighting exactly one of the things which I found pretty depressing about today. It was a hailstorm of jargon, cliches, corporate gobbledygook. What you actually need at the SFA is a bit of honest talking. Stuart Regan was asked a number of questions today, difficult questions, and he slipped straight into survival mode, bat it away. Use the. How many times did he refer to equality, diversity strategy? And he talked about, attaining a level, the SFA attaining. It was like a scout attaining a badge. We're talking about football matters here. I thought actually, my analysis of the whole thing today was that Malky Mackay actually was far more impressive in dealing with these questions than the chief executive was, and I think that's a problem.
Well, one of the problems with Project, it's not a problem, but one of the realities of Project Brave.
I don't even like that name, Project Brave.
Yeah, we're going to discuss that as well. You've got the document in front of you, Tom.
Sounds like
we can discuss that.
How long did it take to come up with that?
Can I just ask you? Actually, what I'll do, I've got a few of the listener comments, and I just want to pick up on something that Keith said there. You can text us 80295 on Twitter at BBC Sportsound. Tweet me at BBC Kenny Mack. Timothy on Twitter says, what does this say to kids? Be as racist, etc. as you want. Say sorry, it's all okay. I'm honestly disgusted. We reward someone with a big wage and responsibility, regardless of his past.
He's went away and done 3 years to re-educate himself.
We'll come back to that. I asked the question on Twitter, does Mackay deserve this chance? Mitch I says, absolutely. Is he to be condemned for eternity? Chris disagrees. Not at the SFA, he says. The governing body and employees need to be beyond reproach. Gordon Reid says 100% no. It's an appalling decision. Disgusting. His actions were a disgrace, completely unacceptable. I won't be buying a season ticket for next qualifiers as a result. I am completely disgusted. And Johnny Faulkner says, I don't recall him accepting responsibility for those horrendous texts. How can minorities have confidence? I want to touch a bit about the language of Stuart Regan today. I'm just trying to find the quote. He said, Malky Mackay described him, he would be a force for good for Scottish football. Is that the right thing to say, given all the sensitivities around this appointment? Should you be using language like that at the moment?
I don't see the problem with it. He's trying to big up his appointment. He's trying to say to all those people who have reservations about him, look, you can believe in this guy. This guy will prove himself. He will be good for the game. He will be positive for the game. Just give him a break. I have no problem with
no. You should say, I understand your concerns. But he
kind of said that as well. Stuart Regan kind of said, look, we accept he has done wrong in the past, but he has atoned for it. He ticked all those boxes as well. I've no problem.
I don't think they accepted the feeling from the public.
Yeah, I
If
think
social media is a
Kenny,
gauge.
he's basically suggesting there, Reagan, and I'm the last guy that's going to defend Stuart Reagan, but he's basically saying there, this is a guy who's going to turn an ultimate negative into an ultimate positive.
Yeah, exactly.
And
that.
I've got no problem with him saying that. He's got to say that, in fact.
Yeah, he's trying to turn a negative headline into a positive one. He's trying to be clever and use it as something that's going to be
right,
painted
Andy. I mean,
positively.
that's a good point, Andy, because that, as us as journalists, that's a nice little soundbite, isn't it? A force for good. That could have well appear in one of the headlines tomorrow. Of
course.
Malky will be a force for good. I think it's clever. I think it's understandable. I wouldn't have any issue with him at all because he's trying to humanise a guy who has been almost dehumanised by some of these texts and tweets that you read out last night and tonight. I mean, that's what you hear. There's an awful lot of anger out there. I understand some of the anger, but I think there's a lot of forgiveness and understanding out there too. And I think, as I said last night, I think those who have no issue with Malky Mackay or have accepted his apology and are prepared to move on are less likely to go on social media than the ones who are.
It's interesting you bring that up, Tom, because there are two bodies which I think have to be, we have to take some cognizance of, and that's kick it out and show racism the red card.
Yeah.
Now, these are two bodies whose only reason for being is to keep racist people out of football or to clamp down on any instances of racism. They have given Malky Mackay their backing on this. If they're prepared to do that, then I think perhaps the rest of us should be.
What about something else that Stuart Reagan said today, Tom? He said that Malky Mackay was the standout candidate. You've been saying otherwise on this programme.
Yeah. I believe that the job was Austin McPhee's if Austin McPhee wanted it. And he obviously didn't because he's now gone to Tynecastle. So maybe he was, once Austin McPhee said no, he ruled himself out, he was the outstanding candidate of the ones that were left standing.
What about the list of candidates? Did that tell us a lot about this job, the interest
It's
in this job?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really, really hard, borderline impossible job. It is a ferociously difficult job that requires every diplomatic skill in the book. United Nations. If Malky Mackay pulls this off, send him straight to the Secretary General of the United Nations, because that will be his level. To try and negotiate his way through all of the petty jealousies and the agendas in Scottish football, if he brings everyone together and moves them all in the right direction, that would be one of the great achievements of Scottish football.
You've talked about the problems at the SFA, and you've been in and around there for the past few months as part of your business course. You're studying to be a chief executive in the game. You gave us a brief insight before in the programme. What did you see in there? How big is the job of anyone that wants to seriously try and change Scottish football?
Yeah, it's huge. I think this problem, well, we've got two guys who have left that position, probably because of that reason. Either their skill set wasn't up to the job or they thought it was an impossible task. So it's a massive job he's got in his hand. I don't know. For me, I don't think I wouldn't have went and appointed someone like him with his CV, his sort of standing in the game. I'd have went down a different route.
Like what?
Well, I think he's a manager. I think he's a coach. I think he's arguably had a good CV.
So you're giving the Scotland job then, Andy?
No, I'm not saying that.
Who would be the right candidate? Do you have a name, or if not, give us a description?
For me, someone like Ross Wilson at Southampton. It used to be at Falkirk.
He's been in here, yeah. He speaks
football,
very well.
Yeah, someone like that. Not necessarily a coach. For what I think, if Malky Mackay owns a pair of boots, he's not going to need them. Because it's not about that, getting on the grass and coaching or anything like that. I don't think this role is involved in that. I read the job description when it was first advertised, and everything that it talked about, it's all about communication and all these different skills which they're looking for. I don't necessarily think they were looking for a manager or a coach.
No, they're not. It's not coaching, it's not managing. I mean, I said it last night, and it's worth repeating that when Brian McClare left, Stuart Regan's comments after that were that as performance director, Brian McClare found himself spending more time lobbying and presenting in the boardroom. It became apparent that he was neither comfortable nor a tenable situation in the long term. So that's the gig. It's presenting, it's lobbying in boardrooms.
It's a politician, you know.
It's a politician. It's a diplomat, and he has. I mean, he has done a bit. He mentioned there in the clips that we played. He has done work in this field at Watford. But everyone's pulling in the same direction at a club.
Exactly.
You know, it's one system. It's not many dozens of systems out there that you have to pull in together. At Watford, it's one streamlined operation which he can head.
Working towards one goal.
This is just many different operations.
Tom, you're starting to sound as if you're coming on board for my proposal.
The revolution.
For a
Revolution is back on.
Bring on the cows.
Would you
this is the fundamental
praise
point.
Stuart Regan today for this appointment?
No, but I'll wait and see, because I think that is the key, one of the key questions. Or there's another way of looking at it, which is to say that it doesn't matter who you put in this position, it's an impossible job. It's doomed to fail because of the fractious nature of Scottish football. Because
why have the position then?
Well, that's a good question. Look, I'll come back to something I said in here a while ago. I think until Scottish football is completely streamlined from top to bottom, this position, this job, I'm not sure that it's doable. I'm not sure that success is achievable. I think that until you've got an independent SFA board who is capable of making decisions for the greater good and imposing its will on clubs rather than asking for clubs to accept it, I think the whole thing's unworkable. I think that Malcolm Mackay, I said, listen, I spoke to him today, I said, you would be the first guy in the history of the Scottish game, you're hoping to become the first guy capable of achieving consensus in Scottish football. It's too big of an ask. Even Malcolm Mackay said, well, you know, let's get it right. If there's 42 people sitting in a room, it's going to be impossible for us all to come to agreement on one subject. I said, well, that's the start. That's where this mission starts and ends. It's going to be impossible. And the SFA needs an overhaul. It needs restructuring. It needs to become a professional organisation capable of leading and not undermined by, as Tom said there, agendas, or clubs who are looking to take their share of the pie, until Scottish football's grown up enough to accept that we need restructuring from the top down. I don't think anybody can go into that job and make a success of it, and I'm afraid that's why I think it's doomed.
Well, what chance of that? You've worked, you've been in the SFA. Tell us what you saw. Even the number of people that worked in there I found astonishing.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. We touched upon it the last time I was on the show. The sheer volume of people that work there.
Which was?
160, approximately, yeah. Just what Keith was saying, I think you used a word there that I think that's the most important word, impose. The SFA should be the all-empowering governing body in Scottish football. What they say should go. You know, they hold the key to Scottish football, if you like. I know it's a members' association,
and
whatever,
and that's why it's undermined. It undermines itself because of the way it's structured.
And you talked about seriously need of modernisation.
Yeah, I think it's got to take a grip. I think it's got to take a grip of issues like this, and if it's getting clubs to buy into something, whatever that strategy is, project, then it's got to kind of rule with a iron fist almost, and make them buy into it. You know, there's all sorts of ways. I think clubs rely on funding by doing certain things for their academy. Take the funding away from them. You know, make them sort of adhere to what you want to do for the greater good of Scottish football. People might not like it at first, but at the end of the day, we're all here for the greater good of Scottish football. So,
did you sense a frustration in there?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's fair to say. Yeah, I think they are frustrated. I think they would like to do more. You know, at the end of the day, they're the ones that always get the criticism, but to a certain extent, their hands are tied. You know, unless the clubs vote for it, then
therein lies the problem. The SFA, as we keep being told, is the clubs.
Is the clubs.
Yeah. So until that situation is resolved, until you get an independent professional body running the game, entirely independent and capable of making decisions for the greater good, then I'm afraid all these measures, as you know, as ambitious, as well-meaning as they are, they won't get off the ground. If they do get off the ground, it'll be in a half-baked form. I'm afraid we are doomed to fail until it changes.
But it's not going to change. I mean, unfortunately, it's not going to change.
Well, you say that, Tom, but down in England, since that last the discussion we had about it in here, down in England, you had a whole bunch of former chief execs and chairman of the FA writing to Parliament to say exactly this point, that the FA will not change itself please step into this, get involved, redraft legislation, make the change that these guys are unwilling. Turkey's voting for Christmas, it's the old cliche. They have begged, besieged Parliament to get involved, the government to drive change. Now, maybe we have to do something similar here.
Yeah, good luck with that. It's just not going to happen. There's no way that the clubs are going to stand back and allow these new people, whoever they may be, to come in and run the game. I mean, it's just not going to happen. So we are stuck with this. I think Malky Mackay, and I know we're being very, very negative tonight. Malky Mackay, I think, can make little victories. He can win little victories in this job. I think he can. I think he will move things forward a little bit. But in terms of the big picture, I think he's just going to run into a brick wall after a brick wall, unfortunately, because the resistance to change is out there. And just to stand up for the SFA for a second, I think there's an awful lot of really, really good people in the SFA
that is,
who would agree with what we're saying tonight. But they can't come out, obviously. But who would agree, who want change, who want new thinking, who want a blank canvas, who are so frustrated and stymied in the way they want to do their jobs by the old thinking. But they are frustrated as everyone else, as journalists, as supporters, as everybody else. It's just a logjam.
What I find so frustrating today is that, as I said at the start, this is the fundamental issue. If we can't fix this, if we can't produce a better standard of players, then we're damned for all eternity. If we cannot fix this, then it's just one downward slide. That's it. We're in a tailspin. So this has to be fixed. This is the key issue. And yet the SFA...
He's saying it's not going to happen.
And the SFA, in their wisdom, I'm talking about producing better players. Yeah. This appointment today. The SFA, Stuart Regan, finds a guy whose backstory becomes the headline act, whose backstory, whose indiscretions, take away from the scale of the task and the importance of the job. That's a disappointment. And then when you actually ask Stuart Regan, as I did later on in the press conference today, Can you please sum up for me what it is, put your hands in the air, accept that your previous appointment in Brian McClare was wrong, Vota was wrong before that. In fact, you didn't seem to even know what the credentials were you were looking for when you appointed Brian McClare. So tell us, give us something that we can believe in you. What mistakes did you make? What have you learned by that episode? And what different qualities do you see in Malky Mackay that you did in Brian McClare that makes him the man for the job?
What's the answer?
Jargon.
Right. Well, but you're talking about the importance of this job. We've got a guy in here who's a former player, a guy in here who's been in and around the SFA, and he's saying they've got completely the wrong type of person for this job. This massive appointment. We're not talking about importance, Project Brave, and there's a guy saying that he's the wrong type of character.
Listen, whether he's a right or wrong type of person, we'll see, we'll find out, because he'll be judged on what he does, as was touched upon. He'll be judged on his actions and what he can implement. So that remains to be seen whether he's the right guy. But for me, I'm talking about a type of person, someone with the skills, the skill set, abilities. I'd have went for someone different, me personally. I'm not in a position to make calls like that, but that's just my opinion.
The thing that scares me, Andy, was that Stuart Regan's answers lead you to believe that there was no real solid, as you're saying there, here's a set of skills that we need, or here's the type of person, or a guy who's expert in X, Y, or Z. This looks to me like a shot in the dark. And that's the most worrying thing.
I think they went for Brian McClare because he was a big name. And he had gravitas in the game, and they hoped that when he was going around talking to clubs, trying to build a consensus, that his reputation and all that he did in the game would stand to him. Now, that didn't work. So the alternative to that is a kind of Austin McPhee character who has the skill set in his past to do all the performance director role. But A, went to Hearts, and B, didn't have the big name to go around to all these clubs, didn't have the presence.
Tell them where they were going wrong.
And tell them where they were going wrong. I mean, so we're looking at, basically what we're looking for someone here is a person who's been an international class footballer.
Was actually one of the
who's also a diplomat.
Was it for the post? Yeah,
a business leader,
coached or managed at international level.
That was in the job description originally.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but we're looking for the impossible person. We're looking for, and
the impossible person for the impossible job.
Yeah, maybe.
Right. you've got the much talked about Project Brady. We'll discuss that in a little while in the
call it
programme.
something else?
Yeah, well, look at this
Project
strategy.
Jackal. Project Jackal.
The revolution, for God's sake.
I think it would look a lot different than that if it was called Project Jackal.
Wouldn't have seen any big words in it. Right, we'll talk in a minute about that. I just want to pick on a couple of things from the press conference today, Tom. You touched on the top about a story that appeared in the Daily Mail last night that got a lot of people talking on social media, a potential late spanner in the works.
Yeah, I mean, this is Cardiff City. I mean, there's been lots of follow-ups, and this has become a quite big story during the day. So Cardiff City are pursuing a High Court claim for damages against Malky Mackay and 4 others, including the former director of football at Cardiff and 3 different agents, over an alleged dishonest conspiracy. And a hearing was due to take place today in the High Court to decide whether all of this case would be heard in public or in private. All of this comes on the back of, well, according to Cardiff, about 2 transfers. The transfer of Stephen Colker from Cardiff to Cardiff from Tottenham and in 2013, and Peter Odemwingie moved from West Brom to Cardiff in around the same time. Those are £11 million worth of transfers. The figure mentioned by Cardiff in their claim is a £10 million claim for damages against these 5 people, Malky Mackay being one of them. It's sparked by Vincent Tan, the owner of Cardiff, who we all know about from Malky Mackay's text story. Vincent Tan brought this to light through the Daily Mail. Vincent Tan is a sworn enemy of Malky Mackay, has made no secret of that, has accused him of all sorts in the past. Malky Mackay has denied it. He said there's no wrongdoing at all.
He was expecting this story to appear.
He was expecting. I think. I know people were reading when this went online last night on the Daily Mail website. I think everyone was kind of thinking, "Oh, this is a kind of real opportunistic move from Vincent Tan to bring this up the day before Malky Mackay gets a new job." Is actually a coincidence. Because there's no way Vincent Tan is saying to the High Court, right, can you hear our case on the specific day that Malky Mackay gets a new job? It was actually a coincidence. But the timing of it was pretty problematic for Malky Mackay. As we say, we have to repeat that Malky Mackay says he knows about these charges, has known about them for some time, that he says there's no truth in them. But there is a potential problem here for Malky Mackay and for the SFA, and it's Vincent Tan, who is a dog with a bone. He's not going to let this go. The feelings here are really, really strong against Malky Mackay. And certainly I spoke to a journalist in Wales today, and I don't think he's going to back down on this, Vincent Tan. So this is something that Malky Mackay and the SFA are going to have to deal with.
And Stuart Regan said Malky had been completely honest. He told them they were expecting this as well today.
Yes, absolutely.
He also was asked today, Tom, Stuart Regan, asked if there was hypocrisy with his appointment given the sacking of Hugh Dallas for sending an inappropriate email.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's different regimes, wasn't it, at the SFA?
No, Regan was
Regan
was heading it up.
Was he?
I believe so.
I never thought that Hugh Dallas should have been sacked for what I thought was a fairly trivial forwarding of a dodgy email. And so that's where I come from. Is it hypocrisy? The question is absolutely a legitimate one to ask. And maybe it is. I just think that I don't think Hugh Dallas should have been sacked, and I don't think that these text messages should be held against Malky Mackay now that he has apologised profusely for them.
Stuart Regan didn't want to engage on that
Didn't
today.
answer the question.
Didn't answer the question. Lots of people getting in touch with the programme tonight. Matthew Rosser asked the question, did Hugh Dallas deserve another chance? Disco Davey, it's a no from me. Where was Hugh Dallas' second chance and he only forwarded an email? Seems if the face fits. Alan McDonald on Twitter, he's been given the chance, so he needs to be amazing in this role. Lots of people didn't want him. Jamie Gray says, one thing for a private commercial club to hire someone with background issues, but SFA should be squeaky clean. Neil Ritchie says he should close the door behind him, taking Regan and Strachan with him. And Doogie on Twitter, time for Regan to resign as soon as possible, making Scotland a laughing stock. Now, as you said, you've been a long-time critic of Stuart Regan, Keith. How big a risk is he taking with this appointment?
I'm not sure that Stuart. I mean, what are we talking about? A risk for himself or a risk for Scottish football?
A risk for himself. The third if this doesn't work, and say something happens with Vincent Tan or something, it's the third performance director in 5 years.
Well, I don't care about what happens to Stuart Regan. That's the difference. I care about what happens to Scottish football, and I think that he's taking a risk.
I think you do care. You want him gone.
I think that would be better for Scottish football if he was. Yep. I think we might be in a place where we might get someone capable, at least trying to implement the sort of change that we need.
But we've said it's impossible. Is he not an impossible job as well? What powers does he actually have to change?
Well, then he's minister without. Well, then he's a minister without portfolio. And as a chief executive, you've actually got an onus. If you believe that your ideas are being marginalised, or the direction that you're trying to take your company is being blocked or vetoed by people, you've got an obligation to stand up and say, well, do you know what? I can't do the job that you're paying me to do. I'll walk away.
What about the timing of this appointment? The SFA under a lot of pressure in other areas, the abuse claims, we discussed that earlier in the programme, the performance of a national side. Is it just unfortunate the timing? Did they have to get their man in now?
Well, listen, I think what the SFA should have done was they should have appointed Michael O'Neill as manager of the national team. They should have brought in Austin McPhee as on the technical side of the national team, plus performance director, a double role, like they have in Germany, like he does indeed for Northern Ireland. It's I think that was an opportunity lost. I think that should have happened. It won't happen now. And I think of Malcolm Mackay, you know, of the rest of the candidates that were out there, yeah, why not? They had to appoint somebody. I think this is an important job, but it's a nigh on impossible job. Someone needs to try and take it forward a little bit, just inch it forward a little bit. And I think this is going to be a relay race, and I think this job is kind of set up to be a perpetual relay. Someone is going to carry the baton forward a little bit, is going to fed up with the job, and is going to move on. And then somebody else is going to carry the baton and move it forward another bit and get fed up and move on. I think that's probably what we're destined. Is Malky Mackay going to be in this job for 5 years? I doubt it.
What worries me, Tom, is that, you know, when you say that, we needed to make an appointment of a performance director, and yet the SFA, in its wisdom, decided to push on with its working group review of recommendations to put forward. As we'd spoken about in here previously, a guy that comes in and says, looks at this review and doesn't fancy it. Well, what chances did he have of getting that job? If I looked at this working group review and said, well, see all this that you guys have been putting together for the last however long, I don't want any of it, I'd scrap the lot of it. You've got no chance.
Yeah, that's right. The new performance director, or whoever he was going to be, should have been on that board. He should have been part of that panel.
This should be a blank canvas for the guy.
Integral part of that process. Yeah, I think Malcolm Mackay touched on it. He says his job is about implementing this Project Brave. He's as part of the interview process, stage 2. He had to critique Project Brave. That's what he actually said. So I think he's got to run with that. You know, I know he said there'll be room to tweak. I'm not convinced. I think what he's there you go, follow that.
Well, is that not a major source of concern if that is the case? I mean, what is the point?
He's surely going to be given some license, because all of the candidates in the shortlist had to critique Project Brave.
Yeah, they'll all bring their personality.
So I think Malcolm Mackay is going to look at that and say, look, do you know what? I want to change this, and this. He has to. Or else there's no point in appointing him. If you can have a respect enough to appoint him to implement the strategy, but not respect enough for him to accept his criticisms of the strategy. He has to have his own stamp on this if he wants to have his own stamp. And I'm sure he will.
If you're sure that this is your guy, if you're convinced that this is your man, then surely you say to him, "Here's a blank canvas. You go and tell us."
Yep.
Surely.
Yep.
At least you play a part in it.
I think you do.
I'll get a few more of these texts and tweets out, and then we will discuss the strategy for moving forward. Chris Hunter on Twitter, Malky speaks well and people should forget the past, albeit it was a bad thing he did. Let's move forward and see what happens. Telstar's Tam says he deserves a chance to be back in football, just not at such a high-profile job as this. Russell Abercrombie, there's a growing amount of people who will simply boycott the SFA until Mackay and Reagan are gone. I'm one of them, and that isn't bluster. This is a final straw for me and many others. And Alan Ryan says, what a grilling from the press for Mr Mackay. Where else does such a public grilling occur after a successful interview? Crazy, says Alan. So keep your thoughts coming to the programme. So you've got the document in front of you. Give us an idea of what's in there, what Malky Mackay is going to have to implement.
Well, look, a lot of this stuff has come out. The big headlines are, the reduction of the number of club academies in this country. There's 29 at the moment. I think Stuart Regan wants to bring it down to 16 or less. The reduction of the number of players in the club academy Scotland, a big reduction. It's on 2,300 players at the moment. That's a ridiculously high number. That's going to come down quite sharply. There are incentives to play. The clubs should be incentivised for playing 17 to 21-year-olds in their first team. There's the idea of bringing in a reserve league. There's summer football for under 16s in the performance academies, encouraging clubs to develop Colts teams. All of those issues, Kenny, they've all been outlined before. There's also the thoughts on the performance coaching workforce. There's been criticism in there saying there has been no strategy to develop coaches in the performance pipeline, so they need to get that up and running as well. This is a fairly momentous task facing them.
Well, Henry McLeish, the man that carried out the last major review, said on BBC Radio Scotland this morning the current youth system is working, but can be further improved to ensure the best talent is identified early and nurtured. He also said that the game is running out of excuses and hopes the new performance director, Malky Mackay, will have big ambitions for the development of the game. It seems to be, what you're saying is, his ambitions really don't matter. He's to deliver this. And the key thing seems to be, from the headlines over the past few weeks, the academy structure and the changes you want to that. Is that key for you?
Yeah, Malky Mackay talked about widening the search, widening the net, and yet, forgive me if I'm wrong, this is a Project Brave not all about elite versus elite? And
bringing the numbers down.
A little bit of contradiction, so that will need to be sorted straight away. But no, I think we do produce good players up to a point. I think there's a cliff that they all seem to fall off at the age of, 18, 19.
Why do you think that is?
Lack of first team football, maybe. I think there's too much pressure on first teams because of the financial aspects of relegation, etc. So clubs are reluctant to put the young players in at that age, and allow them to make mistakes and allow them to maybe drop points here and there and for their greater development.
And they're so desperate for cash, even at the end of the season, you think and they're safe, but they might ordinarily put their younger players in, but there's probably so much reliance on the extra, whatever it is, 80 grand for finishing a place above. Exactly. There is so much pressure because we have no money.
That's it. Clubs are living hand to mouth sort of thing.
If there's one thing that I cling to from this today, one shaft of light.
Yep, we'll take that.
Is the discussion that we had about the possibility of the reintroduction of the reserves, because I think that's a much needed step back into the future for Scottish football. I think that we've lost so much from getting rid of the reserves. I think that our academy players are wrapped up in cotton wool and told from the ages of whatever 12, 13 that they're going to be the next star. They're cosseted, they're protected, they've given no sort of introduction into the real life, the real nitty-gritty life of Scottish football. And I think that if you've got a boy at 16 and you think this boy's got a real chance, the best thing you can do is take him out the academy where it's all just a little bit too easy. Say, there you go, son, let's put you in the reserves. You're going to be playing with seasoned pros, guys that are 30-odd-year-old, maybe with I don't know how many games under the belt at top team level. But this is the introduction you need to the real life, not the sort of false atmosphere that's created in the academies. I would love to see that come back. Actually,
there's 2.2 million invested in the club academies from the SFA. Now they have, and there's going to be a new weighted points system about where that money goes from Project Brave. They talk about measurable performance outcome. MPOs. Jacko's just fallen off the chair. MPOs. Now this is number of young players you're bringing through, 15, 17-year-old women's teams. All of those coaches. Many different aspects to this. There is an interesting statistic here. The top 10 academies, in terms of measurable performance outcomes, deliver 75% of the total outcomes. So basically, the average measurable performance outcomes for the top 10 academies in Scotland is over 200 outcomes per season. The average for the rest of them is less than 20. So hence, you can see why there is a move to dramatically reduce these academies from 29 to 16 or maybe less. Now, that's not saying that a club who's not selected to be one of the new SFA new academies can't fund their own academy. It's just that they're not going to get
elite status
and elite
funding
and that level of funding. But it seems to me that some of the academies, as in 10, are doing a lot, and a lot of the others are not doing a whole lot in terms of development.
Listen, and I couldn't disagree with that, but I find this number 8 for the proposal for the elite, I find that a strange number. I wonder how they came to it. I know that it's caused a lot of anger behind the scenes, a lot of concern. There are clubs like Motherwell who have made no secret of the fact that I think they're already consulting lawyers. Because if they were to be frozen out of the top 8 elite, then their entire business model is undermined. Because their entire business model depends upon.
But that's if it's 8, though, Keith. You know, I mean, there's a lot of kind of fear out and loathing out there. You know, the number Stuart Regan has mentioned, I think, is 16. But I've also heard 10 and 8. So we're not quite sure about what the actual
I think there's 2 levels. There's an elite level now. I think that Stuart Regan's preferred model, I'm told, is the model of 8, and I think that is what's causing a great deal of anxiety among these member clubs.
Yeah, that's sort of all very well. You're talking about these MPOs, but and that's going to be used to filter down the number of academies. Is that right? Well, that's saying that these MPOs are fit for purpose and that they actually are delivering tangible outcomes that actually make sense and mean something. You know, and if they're not, then makes a mockery.
I just get the feeling that they've sat in a room for 3 months to come up with the term MPOs. That's the sort of talking shop that we're involved with here. Measurable performance outcomes.
Well, look, I mean, but it's. Listen, I know it's you can mock the term. Come on, but you can measure. Okay, you can measure the number of 17 to 21-year-olds you're playing in your first team from one season to the next. You can measure the number of full-time coaches, the strength and conditioning coaches, the sports scientists you have in your club. You can measure that.
But are they any good? You can have them.
Oh, I know, but that's exactly.
I could be employed as a sports nutritionist tomorrow. It doesn't make me a good one.
Yeah, I would hate to be a sportsman. Would you?
Certainly not a sports psychologist, that's for sure. He's not going to motivate you.
No, absolutely.
He's worse than me for negativity.
But all of this, I mean, you know, establishing a women's program,
you, Kenny.
all of that stuff is measurable. But Andy, you're right. It's you might have the people in place, but are they any good? But I guess that's part of the measure. That's maybe, is that Malky Mackay's gig to assess all these people, to monitor that
at every club.
Barry Ferguson was in here last night, and he was saying it's so wrong that you set up here is wrong. He's one of many that's been in the studio calling for the return of the reserve league. Is that something as a former player that you agree with?
Absolutely.
What's your experience of it?
I played as a 17-year-old. I was at Birmingham. I come through the academy down there, and I played against, remember a guy called Colin Cooper, England and Midlands? I played against him. He must have been 30 plus at the time, and he gave me an absolute lesson. And I remembered that for the rest of my 16-year career. That stood with me. I remember the feeling during the game, the feeling walking off that park, how much I just couldn't cope with him that night. But I tell you what, I learned a lot as well. And I think
that's where you learn your lessons.
Absolutely.
The technical stuff should all be taught and imparted to kids up to the age of 16. Once you're getting near physically ready to go and compete as a man, get in there because the learning curve is so steep.
This is you talk whatever sphere or career you might be in, whether it's journalism, whether it's business or something. You could go to all the journalism schools or all the business schools you like, and you could do all the courses there for 2 or 3 or 4 years. But if you sat beside an experienced old hack for an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours, you'd learn more about the reality of the world that you want to go into, wouldn't you, Keith? I mean, it's we've all done it.
The old adage to that is you would learn. You can spend 4 years trying to study it. You can go into the newspaper environment or whatever professional environment, be it football, whatever. You'll have to spend the first year unlearning half of the stuff that you get taught by the people who know about it only by reading in theory. Get into the cutting cold face of the thing, and that's why I would say if you get 16-year-old boys and you think they've got a chance and you think they're just about physically ready, get them in there, because that's where they're going to start really learning the big lessons.
An integral part of your business course has been that, hasn't it? Getting to the SFA and finding out how a business works.
That's what I was just going to say. A sort of 4-year course, and I remember when I was in at the SFA, I sat in some sort of meeting. Can't remember the title of the meeting, but I learned more in that sort of hours meeting than I probably have done in the 4 years. It was everything that I'd seen in textbooks and presentations in real life there in front of me, in a real context that I could understand it, and it was great. And I suppose that's much like what we're talking about, the reserve league and playing against these old seasoned professionals. That was it in another.
I mean, excuse my ignorance on this, but why was the reserve league ever done away with? I'm not sure I was in this country for this. Does anyone know why it was done away with? What was the rationale behind? Because it seems completely logical to me. Andy, your story about Colin
modernisation.
Cooper, you think that's logical?
I think they were trying to make the step between reserve youth football and first team football closer, perhaps.
But it's never been further away.
And absolutely.
As a senior player, did you I presume playing some under 20 games when you come back from fitness?
I was Dunfermline. I coached under 20 when I played there. I combined that with coaching. The under 20 league it's not fit for purpose.
Why?
It's not football. It's not real life football. For instance, you're a League 2 manager and you're looking for a centre back. You are not going to find a centre-back that you need. Well, you certainly can't go and watch under 20 games and pick out qualities. The ball's never in the air. You go and play for Montrose and all you do, you spend 90 minutes heading the ball.
Kids are all playing like Barcelona.
You go and watch under 20s. You'll walk away from the game thinking, I don't know if he's any good in there. I don't know if he can cope with the physicality that he's going to come up against.
And if you put that boy in a game on a Saturday, it's a completely different game.
Absolutely, and the boy will learn more going into a game like that. I get we all want technical players, we all watch the great players and the great teams, and we all want to be like that, but there comes a stage when there's another part of the game.
You need to add a few strings to your bow.
Absolutely.
But it just shows you on that little. Forget about all the academies and all the other stuff in this Project Brave. Every footballer that I've ever spoken to has said, bring back the reserve league, and they've said it for years. And with all of that knowledge saying the same thing, we still haven't made it happen.
Well, do you know what?
So let's hope that this is, and I do believe this is one of Malcolm Mackay's...
Well, I wanted to end the programme on a positive tonight. I couldn't find a positive text or tweet. That's the truth. But I have just been followed, I kid you not, on Twitter by someone using the tag Armageddon. So apologies for that. I don't know what that tells about Scottish football, but it's been a really good debate tonight. Thanks to Keith Jackson, Tom English and Andy Barham. We're back tomorrow night, 6:30. That's it. Thanks for listening. Don't forget you can receive all the latest sports news in our daily bulletins on Radio Scotland and at our website, bbc.co.uk/sportscotland.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Radio Scotland.